So up to this point, we've seen examples of being able to read from the DOM and get a hold of a reference to those to those DOM elements and store them locally so we can manipulate them. We can also generate content, right, and put it back into the DOM. Right. So for instance, here in the users we have H1, we have three H1s. How about we add another H1 programmatically? Okay. So let's do that. And we have users, we have faculty, staff. Let's add students, right, to an H1 that contains students in there. So to do this, we can say let students, excuse me, student, we can say jQuery, 6 characters typing to jQuery, it's too long for me, right? And I'm pretty lazy. So there's an alias that for jQuery that is the $. $sign is an alias for the variable jQuery. So you can use $signs, if you're lazy. And a good software engineer is a lazy software engineer. So we like to be able to we can use $sign instead. So to create content, right? For instance, I want to create dynamically. I want to create a brand new H1 and put students in there. Students. Right. This allows me to create on the fly. It allows me to create content. It's not going to display just yet, right? This creates it and binds it to your student variable, but it's not going to be rendered by the browser until you add it to the DOM, right? To the browser's DOM, right? Right now it's in memory. Yes.
So I assume this is going to lead into connecting this JavaScript to a button to add like a
Yep,
row.
exactly. Yep, we'll do that. That's what we're doing today. So here's students, and not until you add it to something that is already in the DOM will this actually render. Okay. Also notice something here, that the syntax of this string is different from the syntax of the other string up there, right? Notice that the syntax over here was CSS. It's a CSS selector, whereas the string here is a fully formed HTML string. Yes. So the jQuery function is smart enough, right, to look at this string and realize how to behave. So it's not really overloaded, right? It behaves because there is no overload in JavaScript, right? It parses the HTML and then realizes how to behave. So if you give it a CSS selector, its understanding is that, I got to go fetch the DOM element, right, and bind it. Whereas here, if you give it an HTML, piece of HTML, it allows you to create new content, right? Brand new DOM node that is not yet in the rendered. So to render it, we need to add it to the existing DOM that is out there. Okay, so let's see, where can we bind it? Well, let's see. All these H1s, they are all children of the body node. See that, right? Just like these, all these LIs are children of the UL. See that, right? So if we want to render it, we need to tell it who your parent is. Where are you going to fall in this hierarchical tree? Right? We're going to want to find. Maybe we can add it to the body. Let's do that. That means that I have to go fetch the body. Once I have the body, I can then append my brand new H1 to the body, right, and add it in there. So let's do that. Let's grab the body. Let's say body. Again, this is a CSS string, so it's grabbing it and binding it to a local variable, and then we can do body append, right, and then we can append the student. Yes.
Why don't student and body have $sign before it?
Oh, thank you. But it's a naming convention, right? So it doesn't affect the behavior. Right. Yep. But let's be consistent. Very good. Yep. So student is now bound to this new node that I just created, and we're going to append it, right? So if we go back and refresh the page, we have students listed down below. Everybody good? All right. Excellent. We could do something similar to this list of users over here, right? This Alice, Bob, Charlie. We can add maybe A, B, C, D. Dan. Let's add Dan over here in this UL. So we can grab the UL. Maybe we should give it an ID here. We can say maybe user list. Okay. We can grab the user list. We can say let user list $, grab the user list. There it is, right? And we can append to the user list. We can say user list dot append. We can append li, right? Dan, and close the li. Yes, right? So append is also very powerful. You can either give it a node that has been already instantiated before, or you can give it a string, and it will build the node for you and then append it. Okay. So if we do that, and if we refresh, right, notice that we have Dan added to that UL. Make sense, right? Now this li over here, right now this li is just a simple, it's just a simple piece of text. Yes, we could have instead created A B C D E ed. So let's build ed. Let's create ed, and ed it's going to be an li. We could do the same thing we did here, right? Build a whole node, or build a whole node like this. But instead, I'm going to take a little longer. I'm going to create an li, right? So that is just the li, right? Only the li, and then I can append to it. I can say ed. I can append text that says ed, and then append ed to the user list, and then append ed to the user list, right? And if I refresh, there's ed, right? Yes, you could close it. Yes, it would be empty, right? We have nothing, and then you can append to it. This shortcut of just giving it just the opening, right? It's understood as an opening with a closing, as a node. It builds the node, Yeah, an li node. The only reason I took this longer way of doing it, right, is just to show you that you can append within append within append. You can, especially if you have very complex parent-child relationship, right, where you have, a child that has a parent that has a parent that has a parent all the way to the top, right? You can append and move around as complex as you want. Yes. Yeah, it will keep appending text. You can append other things. You can say $ed, append other things. Maybe you can append a button. Right, so you have ed and then append a button or a table, or it can just get more and more complex. Right, you can start. Usually, what you do is you start with the simplest of things, which get appended to something a little more complex, and that gets appended to something more complex, and so on and so forth. Right, and move up. Yes. Yep. And see why I added that button? That's exactly why I took that long cut, right? That I can build these more complex elements, right? Because I want to be able to add buttons later on, right? Like a delete button. All right, everybody okay? All right. Or I could do something. Maybe I can iterate over the like a loop. I can say for loop, right? Where I can iterate over the users, in users, right? And create a brand new li from the array that I had earlier. No, we had a users array before. We can say create a brand new li. So let user li be li, right? I could go this way, right? Li, add, and whatnot. Yes, I could do that. But I am deliberately going to do this. I'm going to say li, and I have users sub u dot username. Yes, username, and then append this li down here. Yes, okay. And then I'm going to append that li to my user list. I can say user list that append this user list here, user li. Right? If I render it, there it is. So we have Ed, and then we have Alice, Dan, Frank, and Ed. Right? Those four, I believe, are the original arrays up here. Right? We have Alice, Dan, Frank, and Ed. Everybody good? Right. Now, what I did want to point out here is that this concatenation, this string concatenation over here, that is oftentimes considered bad practice of starting to concatenate lots and lots of strings. It can become very, very complex and could be very, very error prone, right? That you don't close the quotes right, and you're not sure if the opening has a closing tag and things like that. So if you are going to do things like this, right? If you need to do complex things like that, JavaScript added a new syntax, right? That allows you to make this a little easier. It's the backtick syntax, right? Instead of using double quotes or quotation, you use backticks, and you now remove the necessity of having these concatenations, right? So in any embedded string or any embedded expression, right? You can escape it using the $ curly bracket syntax, right? And this would be the quotation backtick, right? So this makes it just a little bit easier to read. Yes. Oh, it's just a string concatenation. Behind it, it's using just string buffer. Yeah, it's giving us a syntax that's a little bit easier to read, and also you can break it out into multiple lines, where you can break it out so that if you have fairly complex strings, you can break it out and actually see what you're doing, right? And this behaves just the same. Make sense? All right. Okay, this is hard to read. Wait. There we go. Okay, this will come in handy later on when we look at React. React uses this a lot, right? Where we can break out strings and we can easily embed JavaScript inside of HTML, inside of JavaScript, inside of HTML, right? And it allows you to go back and forth, really easy between the two languages. Okay. But notice here that that here we have kind of like Alice and Dan and twice in the list, right? This one because we were doing this manually, right? But we're going to abandon this doing it manually. Instead, we're going to do it programmatically. Basically, we're just going to use this for loop here. But notice that we have it twice. So what we might want to do is just empty the user list. Just empty the content. Anything that is inside of the UL, just throw it away, right? Because I'm about to re-render the whole list brand new, right? And we can do that, and then just when we display it, notice that we just have those 4 elements, right? The only 4 in that array. Everybody good, right? And actually, this allows us to do certain things, such as maybe this could be somewhat of like a reusable function, right? That we can call anytime we want to render the list brand new, right? So we can wrap this instead of a function. Maybe call it render users, right? And then the users will always behave as shown here, right? It'll first empty the content. It will iterate over the list, right? And then just add a brand new li for each one of these users. Make sense? Right? Right, excellent. Obviously, if we go back, notice that we go back to our old manual, right? Because nobody's actually invoking our function. So to call our function, at least somebody needs to invoke it at least once at the beginning, right? So that it runs at least once the very first time. Everybody good? Right. Now here, this syntax of declaring functions, it's the old syntax, right? Of declaring functions in JavaScript. We're going to instead use a brand new way of declaring functions that's a little less verbose. We can say here constant is equal to, and then an arrow here. This is referred to as the arrow syntax, right? They're almost interchangeable between the two. There's the slight differences on their behavior, in particular their interpretation of the keyword this and the context in which the function is called. But we'll talk about that a little later. All right. So and I'll only point out the differences whenever it's necessary. Right. But as far as concerned, both syntaxes are interchangeable. This syntax, you'll see a little later that this syntax proves to be much less verbose, right? At least it removes the function keyword when we declare them or when we invoke them. You'll see how much better they are. Anyway, so there we go. So we have the renders function. Any questions so far? Everybody good? All right.